Ladies and gentlemen, this is internet personality Vangelus, and last month I totally forgot that there are leader toys in the first wave of Age of Extinction's Generations offerings. And now that the line's out on shelves for real Z's, let's take a look at the leader class Optimus Prime. Now, there's another leader class Movie 4 Optimus, dubbed the quote-unquote first edition version. It comes with a rounder shield, its box has a cover flap, and it looks, maybe, kinda crappy compared to this one. Be aware of what you're getting if you're ordering online. This is the one with the window box. Optimus is a new truck mode for the fourth film, a Western Star concept truck that looks kinda like a rounder version of his previous movie alt mode when viewed at a distance with your eyes squinted half shut. It's made out of a lot of blue plastic, which contains a really subtle shimmer that is just subtle enough to come off looking flat in most photography. It's also got rubber tires. Those don't make me nearly as excited as the Auto brand hubcaps, to be perfectly honest. Hubcaps which desperately could use some silver paint, something missing from a lot of this vehicle mode. A lot of the alt mode paint apps have gone into the flame pattern, and if they're what pays for vac-metalization, that's probably the second biggest expenditure. I'm not a fan of most vac-metal, but at least it's placed well in this case. Every chromy spot makes sense, but the shiny tanks along the sides of the truck really call to attention the entirely unpainted blue rear canisters. In fact, the entire rear end of the truck is a silver trailer hitch floating in a sea of unpainted blue. While there is some lacking paint coverage, the sculpt is loaded with small details. Tiny Western Star logos along the sides, those Auto brand hubcaps, the sigil up front atop the grille. I'd love to see a premium paint job done up on this mother. Both of Prime's weapons can store in this mode, though the sword is the only one that does it well. The vector shield just chills out on the trailer hitch, hoping you don't see it. Let's just chuck it out of the way, cause it's time to get bipedal. Since the film's CG model is like hardcore physically friggin' impossible to a new extreme, this time around Optimus Prime's cab cracks open to engage in a bit of shell forming. Just a bit though, as the legs fully transform in a satisfying number of steps, and with the lovely little touch of spring-loaded filler panels to cover up a major internal gap. Given the recent concerns of simplification, I dig how nearly every notable chunk of the front third of the truck mode flips around in some way, even if it's all in service of the legs alone. As for the major pieces of shell, they somewhat legitimize themselves by splitting and forming the knight-like armor of the new Optimus Prime design. I particularly like the way that the side panels of the truck split apart to form both the hip skirts and tuck into the robot mode backpack. A backpack that does try to compress for the sake of aesthetics. Finally, there's a proper dynamic head reveal. And I do mean dynamic. This is a high-powered spring. Just ask Bald Matrix.
Oh wow. That was unexpected.
This robot mode is trying really hard to look like, well, this. All things considered, the skeleton and proportions are pretty strong, and hardcore supported by the truck panel armor pieces. The surface sculpting is a sea of on-topic greebly detail. The head sculpt is a delicious portrait of merciless stoicism. This robot mode looks pretty good. Its eyes light pipe quite readily, albeit in yellow. And it has a hella backpack. This is the biggest liberty being taken and the subject of much derision. I certainly wish the top chunk, the part with all the wheels, could have folded up and compressed further. I'd even sacrificed the cool sword sheath for it. But quite honestly, I think Prime wears this backpack pretty well. It's not screen accurate, but is just slim enough and stuffed enough behind his torso to feel like an intentional piece of design. It also puts a lot of the unpainted truck mode stuff out of sight from many angles. But unfortunately, Prime's robot mode looks like it really wants more intricate ink work just about everywhere else. The vac-metal chestplate continues this toy's theme of being way less cheesy looking than I expected, but outside of a few lovely silver paint apps, Optimus is made of big blobs of blue, red, and Games Workshop gray plastic. Well, the red is all paint, but definitely feeling blobby. Those forearms are a bummer. The placement of colors is pretty well balanced, so there aren't really any major visual voids, but I am tremendously eager to see the Takara Tomy version of this toy in person, with all its additional silver paint to bring life back to the gray plastic sections. While a metallic shimmer is somewhat visible in the toy's blue plastic, this gray is dull as dull can be. And dull weapons were a staple of the first edition Trans4mers Optimus, but this generation's version thankfully has more than a few paint apps on his gear. The vector shield has a triple-barreled cannon on it. It kind of looks like a Mass Effect prop. I don't get it, man. But hey, it pegs into either of Prime's forearms, so it's clearly ready to play along. As for the Sword of Judgment, it's, yellow. Man, I don't really like translucent yellow very much, but whatever. It's properly threatening and Prime can properly hold it, but for whatever reason, instead of being a simple peg-into-hole weapon, it uses a tab on Prime's palm that's accessed via an otherwise pointless thumb joint. This feels both unnecessary and parts count wasteful. I'd have taken risks over those thumbs any day of the week. A ball-jointed neck is the right of all sentient something. Actually, this is really cool that there's a ball-jointed neck with this much range of emotion, given that it's on this goofy thing, which I may well be actively trying to get to fire out of his chest. Nope. Alright, well, I really like the way that his neck ball joint works. As for the rest of his body, let's take a look. He's got these big pieces of shoulder armor, which are not bad at getting out of the way of stuff. And that's helpful, because his shoulders are weird. So they've got these big ratchets going on, and you'll notice that the detent points, there aren't that many. And that sucks, man. And down here inside the shoulder well, you've got another ratcheting joint that has way more detents, so what the hell, man? It's also on an angle. So when you're moving this guy's arm up and down, it's not really going forwards and backwards. It's kind of following this outward swept angle, which is weird. If we'll lift his chest up for a second and show you. From the transformation, you've got this this weird angular swing that the weird thing is based off of. Now, it clicks into place up here, but if you unclick it and just start using this as part of the shoulder articulation, then you have these three different axes of motion, which kind of work in a weird way. How many times have I said that now? I don't know. Hopefully you're drunk. But it helps offset the big weakness, which is this, because there are all these other little ways to tweak the position of the arms. So that's kind of cool. There's also a bicep swivel. There's a ratcheted elbow, and it's got enough detents. Everything has enough detents except for this. Rather than wrist joints, which are a great thing to have on a toy that has a sword, he has this thumb, and I already said it, but I wish he had a wrist instead. I wish this was a simple peg-in, but it's not, so we'll just have to deal with that. Over here, where you'd think that a big, crazy leader toy like this would be at its weakest, that being in his groin, he actually has a waist joint. Now, this waist is separate from the assembly that is all of his skirt armor. All of his skirt stuff is above the waist or behind it, you know, mounted on here. But, to my surprise, when I got this guy and opened him up and started messing with him, you can get the waist to pose, and it doesn't completely shatter the illusion of the hip skirt armor right away. That's kind of impressive. The hip skirts are really good at getting out of the way, and what really helps this is that these hip skirts are on their own separate swivel, and then the main plate that they're connected to stays in place behind this guy. I think that's how this all really comes together. His hips are ratcheted, and these things have enough detents, man. And, oh, this outward motion doesn't really, but it's not super tight. It's a lot looser, so you can kind of find these mid-ratchet points that will still work. He's got a thigh swivel. Believe it. He's got a ratcheted knee. It's okay. There's a ball joint down here. It's weird to describe. So there's a ball joint that has almost no motion outside of spinning. And then the entire transformation joint makes for a better ankle tilt than that ball joint. Granted, you're messing with the transformation, but does this really look much worse than this? There's still gray stuff showing, etc. So he's able to keep his feet planted pretty well, all things considered. And that's nice to see, because he's got these large amount of sole space on the bottom of his feet. It's all hollow in there, but there's a ridge. Supposing this guy is weird, because he's full of limitations. But he's also full of little surprises, and that means that there are not a million gajillion poses you can put him in with the simplest of ease, but there are more than 5 or 6 really distinct postures you can put him in, and that's more than I thought, given what he looked like at stuff like Toy Fair or in the box. He's a mixed bag. He's like a zebra. It's got stripes. Why? And in this case, he's got weird joints, but they kind of work. This figure's an ongoingly weird seesawing experience from satisfaction to disappointment. The truck mode's alright from the front, super bland from the back. The transformation's got big-time shell forming, but with extra panel splits and placements that make those steps feel legitimized as they create the new movie design's overhanging armor bits. The robot mode looks great in more than a few poses, but highly uncompliant in going outside of those more than a few poses. I was able to get this guy below retail via a very brief Amazon discount, but I think he feels just alright enough to be worth considering at American retail. At Canada's $60 plus tax, I don't know, man. And if you're somewhere else that's even more expensive, just walk away for now. It's a Wave 1 movie toy. Its probability of going on sale in the next 12 months is high. Monetary issues aside, if you want a transforming movie 4 Optimus of a pleasant stature, I think this is the toy to get. For the right price. He isn't as large as Aught-7s or Aught-9's Leader Primes, but they also predated the effects of the T, E, the economy, and I don't think we'll see another new mold Leader class version of this until movie 5. There may be a Voyager that potentially could do this transformation better, but I don't think that's a surefire thing, especially on Voyager money. Patience is a worthwhile thing, but I have a feeling this is the best we're gonna get for this design for at least the next year and a bit. Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus, and while I would like to review the figure if the opportunity arises, Leader Class Grimlock does not look like $45 to $60 plus tax that I want to spend anytime soon. I'd rather track down the AD-01 Optimus for $60 to $70. Oh, pipe dreams.